Hello and welcome to a CSS animation tutorial. Today we'll be looking at an animation I made called Ask Cat Anything You Wish. It was something I posted on social media and got a lot of positive feedback, so I thought I'd make a tutorial in case you wanted to follow along on your own. So before we start, let's take a look. Alright, so just a quick note before we get started. You'll see the CSS here on the left is kind of commented out, and some of these are collapsed and some of them are collapsed but not commented out. This will all make sense as we go, but just to introduce this is more of a code walkthrough rather than like a code along. So I've already written the code. I'm just going to walk through it with you, explain how everything works, and then of course I'll share the code so you can take it and modify it and do whatever you want with it. But if you want to know how this works and how I kind of approached doing it, then this is kind of, I think, the best format for that, so we don't have to write everything line by line. Cool. So if we want to get started here, so just to prove that this actually works and I didn't just make a video or animate it in some other software, we can go ahead and show kind of a working demo. So what is the meaning of life is what I ask in the video. Press this Ask Cat key. The button falls down, hits the bell. Cat falls asleep to ponder the question, and cat wakes up. Cat has an answer. And of course, if you've seen the video, the answer is meow. So yeah, and then we pop up this tip screen just as a little cherry on top of a joke. Cool. So basically, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that, and this is what we're going to start with. So if we go ahead and look at our HTML, you can see that we've got everything that you've seen from the video and from the animation. We've got a very simple JavaScript file. Basically, all we're doing is we're getting the container via a query selector. We're getting the button, same thing with the query selector, and we're getting the text. The text meaning this Ask Cat Anything You Wish text. And then we have written this function called animate start, and then we're adding an event listener to the button, and when you click the button we run this animate start function, and basically all it does is adds a class to the container called animating. You could also do this like this. I can type here, sorry about that. This is probably the more proper way to do it. So yeah, you could rewrite it like that, and I guess we should, which basically just adds an animating class onto the container, and then we set the button text from Ask Cat, which it starts out as, to a plus sign. We set the text of basically this Ask Cat Anything You Wish to an empty string, so basically just make it go away. And then we have all these set timeouts, and these basically just control like kind of the sequence of the text. So it's not a text overlaid onto the video at the end. It's actually JavaScript running and changing the text as we go. So this is kind of as pure as possible. I didn't want to add too many things in like post-production. I wanted to do as much as I could up front. Okay, so let's jump in. First of all, what I'm doing here is I'm just setting a 0 margin on the body, and that's just because I kind of want everything to be as predictable as possible. I'm using a lot of absolute positioning and top, right, bottom, left positioning because of animation, and it's just easier that way to calculate everything with real numbers. So just gonna zero out the margin. I'm choosing a font family. This is from Google Fonts. You can kind of do whatever you want though. This is just a personal preference. And then specifically for this tutorial, I'm just setting a width and height, fixed width and height, and a position relative on this body. And that's because I kind of record the tutorial in a format that makes sense for social media. So everything is kind of based on that. However, this is a bigger screen we have right here. So in order to kind of mimic what I'm doing on social media, where I'm posting the videos and I'm posting the animations, I'm just drawing this. So don't worry too much about that. Cool. So we've got our body laid out, and this is the dimensions we're getting on social media. And then let's go ahead and add a container. So if we go back to our HTML, we see that the container is just wrapping everything and it's right inside the body. So what I'm doing here is I'm just setting a display grid, a height to 100 viewport height units, and placing items in the center. So all I was trying to do here with this is just get my input and my buttons centered, absolutely centered. You'll see later in the tutorial that this kind of didn't really matter. It didn't really end up mattering, but I wanted to give you all the code as I actually wrote it and not tweak it and fix it. So this is kind of how it was written. Feel free to change this on your own if you'd like, but it worked for me, so you'll see how it ends up playing out. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to move our text. So we want to position it absolutely, just like I said. Kind of makes life easier with animations. We're going to move it 240 pixels from the top, set the font size, set the color, and then set the z-index. And we'll set the z-index because we want the text to actually fit on top of our like dream sequence that we do later. So you'll kind of see how all of that plays out. Don't worry about it too much yet. And then so obviously we've kind of messed our button styles up here. So let's go ahead and look at our button wrapper and our input. So if we go ahead and comment all of these out at once, you can see with the button here that, again, doing absolute positioning, setting a width, padding, a background color, a border radius, text align. This is all pretty standard button stuff. And then again, setting a z-index so it just sits on top of our little dream sequence that we have later on. And then in terms of hover, we just kind of keeping it simple, just to change the cursor to a pointer rather than the default cursor that we have. So if we go ahead and comment out this button wrapper, again, wrappers are pretty self-explanatory, just having it wrap the input and the button here. Go ahead and take a look at this input. Oops, how did I end up doing that? So if we look at this input here, more absolute positioning, more just setting height and positioning and width. Got a dark goldenrod border on it, which is what we're using for this button color, and then just setting a simple border radius. So if I go ahead and save that, things should look a little bit cleaner. Okay, cool. So yeah, things look cleaner already. Notice how we started with this, since we have the since we have the container setting, basically absolute centering our button wrapper. Where is it? We're kind of, when we're setting the top from, we're setting the top basically from the perspective of the centered, like the absolute centered button wrapper. So instead of setting it from like the top of the viewport or the window, whatever you want to call it, since we already centered it, we're kind of adjusting it from there. So like I said, not necessary. There's different ways you could do this, but I think it just gave me a good reference point. Like, okay, if I leave it here, this is technically where the center is. But if I do that, it's kind of in reference to the absolute center. Okay, we're going to leave this meow alone for now. If you've seen the video, you know that's kind of part of the punchline, so we'll leave that alone. Same thing, this thinking wrapper. Let's go ahead and get our cat out here. So if we go back and look at our HTML, we have this cat wrapper class here that wraps an ear and then like a little inner ear, although I don't even think I end up using that, and then a right ear, and then a left eye and a right eye, and then a nose. So the cat is pretty simple. I wanted to keep the shapes pretty simple. I'm not a great illustrator or artist, so this kind of style really lends itself to me anyway. It still takes me a long time to do it, but I think just works for me, and it happens to work for these simple animations. Yeah, so let's go ahead and uncomment out our cat, and then we will also uncomment out our ears and eyes. And do we have, let's see, did I even make a nose? No, I don't even think I made a nose. See, these are just, you can see you're getting a behind the scenes look here at some of like my aspirations versus what ended up panning out in the final animation here. But again, wanted to leave it all in, give you a nice behind the scenes instead of kind of sanitizing everything before. I would also maybe clean some of these, the order that I write the properties in. When I'm kind of writing more quote unquote like production level CSS, I would maybe organize my rules a little bit more. But here you can see that some stuff is like a little bit out of order. Not a huge deal. The CSS runs the same, it works the same, but just letting you know this is a little bit sloppier than what I'm typically trying to do. Cool, so let's save that and refresh, and then we get our little cat down here. So that's looking like it's in a good spot. And let's just kind of click around and see where we are so far. So go ahead and keep an eye on this container class here. If I click ask cat, you can see that the animation is triggering. Let's see what's, oh, right. All of our animation stuff is commented out, but you can see that the animating class is actually applied like we expect it to. And then our plus sign is changed, which we expect that to happen. And then if you remember earlier, we have all those set timeouts that change the text. If you were keeping an eye on this area a few seconds ago, you might have seen the DOM flashing a little bit. That was just what was going on there. But cool. So let's just quickly look at what's going on with our cat. Again, you'll see more absolute positioning here, just setting the same background. I liked this burly wood color. It was a little bit lighter than dark goldenrod, and I wanted to kind of go for like that brown/gray tabby looking cat generally. Setting this border radius on the cat to change it from, just a simple square. Let's go ahead and look at that. If I take the border radius off, it's just a square cat. Actually looks kind of cool. And if I apply the border radius, you can see the border radius property is a shorthand for border top left, border top right, border bottom right, border bottom left. So 140 pixels, we're saying we want the top left, 140 pixels, we want the top right, and then 0 and 0 for the bottom left and bottom right. So that gives us this nice little kind of cat-shaped head here. If we take a look at the ears, this is a kind of old CSS trick just to make triangles. Basically, you set the height and width to 0, and then set the border top to a value, and then kind of just do like a solid border, and then set it to the color that you want the thing to be. So if this looks strange, it's like kind of a common CSS trick just to make a triangle. Feel free to play around with that if you want to change the ear size, but I think in general triangles work pretty well. So yeah, if you look at the actual shape of the element here, it's a square, it's 80 by 80, but because now it's a bald cat, but because we're setting the border top to a value, if we go ahead and tweak this value, you can see what happens here. Because we're setting the border top, the shape ends up looking like a triangle. Okay, so let's see, lost my spot, moving on. Oh yeah, so we've got, again, just some absolute positioning here, placing this 10 pixels from the top, and the top being relative to the size of the cat. So we've got, like I said, this 300 by 200 cat here, and then we just want to place the ears 10 pixels from the top. So you'll notice that I do a lot of like putting things in containers and then sizing them relative to the containers. I think that's a little bit easier than putting everything relatively positioned to like this entire container. You could do that if you want. So you could be like, instead of being like top 10 pixels, it could be like top 700 or 800 or actually 5, I don't know. You get the idea. So I think it's just think about things in relative container sizes, and that makes things a lot easier. So let's refresh and get our things back in a nice state here. Yeah, so our ear left, we've got the border right property set, and our ear right, we've got our border left property set. and that accomplishes the triangles like we want. In terms of eyes, pretty simple shape here. We just have 25 pixels by 5 pixels, black background color. We have a border radius of, let's see, why are they closed already? Sorry, let me just go look at this. Border radius of 25 pixels. Yeah, that's not even having an effect right now. I believe that only takes effect when the animation starts. So let's put a pin in that and come back to it later. But yeah, again, absolute positioning, just 90 pixels from the top, which is the top of the cat. For left eye and right eye, pretty much nothing really adding here except just positioning. So again, the eyes are identical, but we're positioning the left eye 90 pixels or 100 pixels from the left, and the right eye 100 pixels from the right. Okay, let's add our bell here. So the bell comes in a few components. So we've got the bell wrapper, and then we've got the base of the bell, the stem of the bell, and the top of the bell. And we will uncomment out all of those right now. So we've got a nice little whole bell to look at. Okay, great. Don't worry about that quite yet. We'll it'll get fixed when we apply more styles. But right now you can see that we have this little bell here. The reason I made separate components, the reason I made separate components is because they're separate shapes, but it also helps us with animation, which you'll see later. But the wrapper class, all I'm doing is using it to position where the bell is. For the base, that's just this little half dome right here. Just positioning, setting the background color, and setting a border radius on it. For the stem, which is this thing connecting the base to the top, just a pretty simple, very, very, very small rectangle. And then for the top, it's again just a rectangle facing horizontally instead of vertically, so pretty similar things there. And then yeah, that comes together to make a nice little bell for us. Yeah, and then let's go ahead and continue on. What even is the title here? Do I even have a title? Oh, that's subtotal. Okay. Let's not worry about this right now. This is all related to the subtotal stuff. Actually, we can take a look at that. So let's just uncomment all this stuff out. It's related to the tip screen. So if I uncomment all of that out, and then I believe I have a tip wrapper I need to put back somewhere. Nope, I guess that's it for now. If I comment all of that out, refresh, maybe that will come back later. I'm not sure where the tip wrapper went. Oh, tip screen. Huh. Maybe that's, oh yeah, opacity is set at 0 here. So if I actually comment this out, save it, then the tip screen shows up, but we don't want that to show up until the animation. So we can go over that right now though. Let's go ahead and do that again. If I comment tip screen out, you can just see that it's pretty simple. It's just positioning, yeah, it's a wrapper to position this little entire container here, 150 pixels from the top. I went with a really simple font because I wanted it to look kind of like a computer UI. Text align center, that's all centering the button text there. Opacity set to 0. That's just because we want it to start out at 0, and then when the animations kick in, we want it to fade in. So title, that's just part of the tip screen. That's the title here, the subtotal line, and then the subtitle is this add a tip line. And then for the tip, it's a really, really simple button. We just have all of our text basically going down here. We've got all of these divs, and then they're basically just they're surrounded by a 2-pixel border with a slight border radius. Nothing special there. So if I save this, it should hide the tip screen again. Okay, cool. So I want to figure out why is our button here unaligned. might have something to do with the animations. Let's go ahead and wait and see. Again, I wrote this a couple days ago, so not super fresh in my head. All right, so for animations, this is a pretty simple trick. So everything you'll notice here is wrapped in an animating class, and that's the class that we saw in the script.js file. When you click the Ask Cat button, animating gets appended to this container. So it's container and then animating. Let's just click it here and see. So that gets appended, and once that gets appended, suddenly everything that we've kind of written styles for is unlocked. So, and when I say unlocked, I just mean our animations are starting. So if you've seen any of my other animations, you'll see that I pretty much do this in almost all of them. It's a really simple way to just keep your animations in one place. And then I try to make my animation names descriptive, and I try to make my order of things. I try to keep things in the logical, or the sequential rather, the sequential order that they're in, starting from top to bottom. So basically what happens is you'll see that this button here has a turn into ball animation, and it starts at 0 seconds. And so as you go down, the animation delays get bigger. And you can think of animation delays as basically the times along like a timeline when your animation would start. So if this was visualized, we would have a long timeline here, and then the turn into ball animation would be at the beginning of our timeline because it's at 0 seconds. And then the drop animation would be 1 second later. And then the top animation would be 1.1, so barely any further than the drop animation. But if it's visualized on a timeline, it's pretty easy to conceive of. But since it's all written out manually like this, it's a little bit more kind of cumbersome and manual, like I said. So it's a manual process. I'm just going to use that word one more time. It's straightforward once you understand it, but it's a little bit annoying. You could do some CSS variables and kind of do math and maintain it all that way, but I was just trying to get something fun done. So feel free to refactor if you want. I highly encourage it. There's definitely tons of room for improvement here. Another note, you'll notice that I'm not using the animation shorthand. So I could use the animation shorthand, and if you notice, if I start typing the animation shorthand here, you see it's saying, okay, I could just write animation, then I could put the animation name, animation duration, timing function, delay, iteration count, etc. Let's see. Yeah, iteration count and then direction. I'm just writing it all out manually. It's just a personal preference. I think it helps maintain. I think it helps basically, instead of having to write out animation again and then write it all out again for drop, I can just do comma and then drop, and then you can see like I just line all these values up with the order of the names up here. So pretty easy to visualize. If you look at turn into ball, you can go down and look at, okay, animation duration. What's the first animation duration value? 0.25 seconds. So we're saying that we want this turn into ball animation to run for 0.25 seconds, and we want it to run with a 0 second delay, and we want the animation fill mode to be forwards. And all that means is when the animation completes animating, it just stays where it's at. So if you don't set this, the animation will reset. It'll just go back to the beginning stage, but we want it to finish animating and then stay where it's at. Then we've got the animation timing function. There's a lot of different options for this. You can do a linear animation, which just progresses at the same rate the entire time. You can do ease in, which actually starts out a little slow and then moves to like a more steady clip. There's things called ease in, ease out. There's ease out. Lots of different things you can do. This cubic Bezier here, it just defines a specific sequence for the animation to progress in. I'm not going to pretend I wrote this by hand. I just kind of chose a different value. So I'll show you what happens here. If I write animation timing function in VS Code, it gives me all these different values. I just picked a few, kept playing with it until I got something that I wanted, and then saved it and locked it in, and it was fine. So don't overthink it. If you want to really get deep down and learn about these, I think it's worth it. But just for the purposes of having fun on the internet for this project, I just found something that worked for me. But what I was aiming for here, sorry to drag this on longer, what I was aiming for is a value that kind of made the animation look like it had some life. So it wasn't just, oh, we're changing the values of this button into a ball. It was give it personality, like make the button kind of look a little bit alive. So before I keep talking forever, let me go ahead and undo these keyframes just so we can see our animation play out, and then we'll go ahead and talk about them one by one. But I think it's easier to visualize if we actually have things uncommented. So okay, got all of our keyframes out. Great, so we've written our first animation. It's called turn into ball. What is turn into ball? Well, turn into ball is basically a set of keyframes. So if we go down and we look at our keyframes here, we've got one called turn into ball. Basically what you do with keyframes is you define percentages, and then you define things that you want to happen at each point. So this is a turn into ball animation. We're saying it takes 0.25 seconds. At 0% of that 2.5 seconds, so basically instantly, we could set a property here. So we could be like width 2 pixels, and then here we could say like width 5 or 6 whatever pixels, and then yeah, basically we could control the animation at different intervals. But I don't care about that. All I care about is the end. So the end state, I just want it to be 100%. And I want it to be a 10 pixel width. So basically we're going to transition the element to its original width to 10 pixels, and it's going to happen over the course of 0.25 seconds. Then after 0.25 seconds elapses, you can see that we want to start our next animation. However, if you're kind of watching this with a close eye, you can see this runs for 0.25 seconds. Then suddenly the next thing we do is not until 1 second. So this basically should turn into a ball, and then like wait a little bit and then drop. So it could, I could have it turn into a ball and then drop right away, but it's going to turn into a ball, wait, and then drop. These are just personal things to kind of make things look more alive and have, like I said earlier, more life to them and less just kind of static, boring animations. And you don't really figure this out until you just tweak endlessly. So I would say play around a lot and find out what you like. Sometimes you just know it by feel rather than being able to actually express it with code. So play around and get what you want. Don't overthink it. Just start tweaking things. Yeah, so let's save this and figure out why our, let's see here, our button wrapper is position relative. What did I do? Okay, so it was just something with the thinking takeover. Got it. Okay, so that's what happens when you comment code out willy-nilly. But let's go back to our animations here, and let's try it. Okay, so the first thing you saw was that turn into a ball animation. So it turns into a ball, and then it drops. Turns into a ball, takes 0.25 seconds, waits, drops. Yeah, and so that is basically translated directly into that. The next thing we want to do is when this ball hits the bell, we want the bell to react a little bit. So let's go ahead and look at and see what that looks like if we just focus on the bell here. Okay, cool. So instead of just hitting the bell and nothing happening, the ball hits the bell and it moves up and down a little bit as if the ball has real weight and the bell is really being hit by it. So what we're doing there basically is we've written keyframes called bell. And bell is just transforming, and it's translating 5 pixels on the y-axis. So basically that's just saying move 5 pixels down. Then it's taking 0.2 seconds. It starts after 1.1 seconds. So basically we wait for the ball to drop, and as soon as it hits, if you do some math here, it's actually, if we wanted to wait for the ball to hit the bell and then the bell to move, we would trigger it at 1.25 seconds. So we would write this animation delay as 1.25, but we want kind of the ball hitting the bell to affect the bell. So I'm starting the animation a little bit early. Again, just came from playing around and tweaking. Animation fill mode is set at forwards, so we want the ball to hit the bell and then stay there. We don't want it to reset. And then animation timing function is ease in. So that's basically saying start a little bit slow and then drop faster. And that kind of, again, simulates a bit of real weight. Yep, so you can see, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. You can see when this starts, it starts a little slow and then goes fast. It's hard to see because it's moving so fast, but that's what's going on there. Yeah, next, so we're just having the eyes open, close again, and then open. And then you can see here the duration, it's taking the same amount of time, but the delay, we're saying at 1.3 seconds, open the eyes, at 3.3 seconds, close the eyes, and at 10.3 seconds, open them again. So you'll see as the sequence plays out, this makes sense, but right now it looks a little bit confusing. And then, yeah, we have eye open. We basically just want this element here. We want the eye element to change from basically what it's at to a height of 25 pixels. And then when it closes, we want it to go back to 5 pixels. So we're just going open, close, open again. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay, you see they open. He's pondering, he's pondering, he's pondering. They close. And then they open again after 10.3 seconds. Okay, in terms of this thinking takeover that you just saw, it lasts 7 seconds. It takes 3.5 seconds to kick in. So 3.5 seconds is after I click this button here, if that wasn't clear. That's when the animation starts, and that's when our delay starts at 0. So I click this, 1, 2, 3, 3.5. Our thinking takeover kicks in. And all that does is basically, there's already this background element sitting back here, this thinking takeover. There's already an element sitting here. It just has an opacity of 0. And all we're doing is saying, like, at 0, stay at 0. At 33%, go to 0.75. At 66%, go to 1. So basically be fully there. And then at 100%, go back to 0. So basically, cat starts to think, this background gets more intense, and then it goes away again when the cat's done thinking. Let's take a look at meow. So I'll play this while I explain it. Basically, it lasts 1 second, does not start until after 16.5 seconds. So this is 16.5 seconds is when the cat's done pondering your question. So if we look at the meow keyframes down here, we have an element that's sitting right there, and we're just saying, if you look over here, at 50%, go to 1, and apply this transformation, which basically just tilts the element to the side a little bit, or rotates it rather. And then at 100%, go back to 0 opacity. And then we have to preserve this transformation here. Otherwise, if I took it off, then it would go back to 0, and it would unrotate and unscale. Oh, you'll notice here. So we do have it going back to 1. So it starts at 1.2 and then it goes back to 1. And that kind of just means that it grows a little bit and then it shrinks a little bit. It's really subtle, but it's a noticeable thing if you watch it close enough. I'll go ahead and let that play. And watch for the meow. I'll start moving on here and explaining this tip screen animation. It's very simple. It starts at 2 seconds, or 18 seconds rather. Okay, watch the meow. See how it gets big and then small again and fades out. And then the tip screen just popped up, which is what we're talking about now. So we've got keyframes called tip. The tip screen keyframes start at 18 seconds. They last for 2 seconds. And if we look at what that is, all it is opacity 1. So our tip screen class starts with an opacity of 0, and all we're doing is fading it in. So very simple, and we're doing a nice ease in, so it's a little bit more pleasant on the eyes. So that's pretty much it. I know that was quite a lot. like I said, there's a lot that can be improved on. I'm not saying that this is kind of the best way to do it. I think it's a way to do it. I really encourage you to not overthink things. Just dive in, set values that you're kind of curious about, play the animation, tweak them. Don't make everything need to be perfect before you start. I hope that I've demonstrated by showing you my sloppy code that you can just kind of start. You don't need to be a genius. You don't need to be an animator. You don't need to be an artist. You can see that I'm just moving little shapes around like a toddler level here. But yeah, please feel free to tweak the code, have fun, make it a dog instead of a cat, make it say bark instead of meow, go crazy with it. I will post the code, and thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate all of your viewership and support.